tell you a little bit about me and what we're going to be running through. So as Kate mentioned, I've been in hospitality for 20 years. So pretty much all of my career has been in the sector. I've worked across pubs, bars, restaurants and hotels. And 7 years ago, I took the plunge and started my own limited company, which grew arms and legs. And 3 years ago, we developed and built Bums on Seats. And I'm the sole business owner of a strategic sales and marketing agency. There's 27 of us now in the company, so we've grown quite swiftly throughout the pandemic, which has been a real challenge, absolutely not easy. And ultimately what we do is we do three things. We identify opportunities to grow sales in a nutshell. So we go in and work with people like everything from Green King, Brewdog, really big businesses, right the way down to small independents and groups, and identify through health checks and auditing where they could be growing sales, organic growth, and obviously more effective marketing as well. Sales can often be a bit of a dirty word, and I think a lot of people steer away from it, but actually all sales is relationships. It's all about building relationships and connecting with your customers. So whatever industry you're in, everybody needs sales. Obviously, it's heavily focused on numbers, but actually you get those numbers through your customers and your relationships. And that's really what the main point of my workshop with you today is to talk about and focus on. Once we've identified some areas of opportunity, we then obviously implement strategy. And I think strategy is really important. Now, the one thing for me in my own business, which I can share with you, is I've re-strategized my own company probably about 15 times in the last 2 years because of COVID. And that idea of building business resilience has become harder and harder because there's so many more challenges that we contend with. Whether you're a florist or whether you're in hospitality, the challenges are often very, very similar. And we are going to look at some of those, not to put a negative point on it, because it's really good to understand how we find solutions to those challenges. And then the last thing we look at is we deliver that strategy and plan. So we do things like consultancy, obviously. We do a lot of sales training and development. We do a lot of mentorship programs, hence the link here with Kate. And actually we become sales teams for organisations that want it, that don't want the additional headcount. So hopefully I know what I'm talking about. I'm very passionate about hospitality, and this workshop is geared towards hospitality businesses, but fear not if you're not in hospitality, because there will be at least hopefully 2 or 3 key takeaways that you can take away from it and implement. And at the end we've got some really good top tips, which I think whichever your business, there'll be stuff in there that you'll find hopefully very useful and practical. Just to give you an example of my team, so I run my business like a family. We have family values, integrity, passion, honesty. All of those things are really important to me and my business. I think I mentioned it earlier, but when you start a company you have a blank book, and I've worked with some really big corporates that have a lot of red tape and actually quite a negative culture, right the way through to some really small businesses that work bloody hard to scrape every single penny. So I've seen both sides of the coin. My family actually, they're hoteliers and publicans, so I've been brought up in that environment. For me, as I mentioned, people are everything, and I'm really proud of the sales team. We spend a lot of our time out in businesses, and we are UK wide. So we're London head office, and I used to live just up the road. We know Brixton really well, but we are UK wide, and what that means is we get a really good idea of what's happening cross-market. So a lot of our statistics and analysis that we talk to businesses about come from a place of fact, not feeling. And I think that's really important. A lot of companies fall into the trap of making decisions on feeling, and actually what we want to do is try and put some analysis and data behind that, and then we link that with how we're treating our customers, and everything we do goes back to one thing. What do your customers want? What's best for your guest? Because that's really, really important, and often we can forget that. We're going to look at the sort of 3 key areas today. So the first one is engagement and rapport. The second one is loyalty and retention. And the third one is lasting impressions. So they're the 3 things that we're going to look at. Now, again, depending on your business, I think all of these 3 are really, really relevant. So engagement and rapport, that for me is the vast majority of everything we should talk about when we talk about people and sales and relationships. Obviously, loyalty is fundamental now. Everybody wants repeat business. Whatever your business, you want repeat business. And then lastly, what is that feeling that you're left your customer thinking about you and your business? So we're going to explore those. Please, please, please stop me and ask questions. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. I might throw a few questions out there. If you feel comfortable to give me something back, that would be great. But as we're going through, if I mention any terminology or anything that you're not familiar with, because I am quite hospitality focused, just shout and just ask me how that could be adapted, because I really want you guys to get as much out of this as possible. I also talk quite fast. fast, I'm quite enthusiastic, I talk with my hands, so hopefully that's okay. I might sit down and give you a break because I can be quite exhausting, but let's have a really good hour together, and hopefully, as I say, you'll find this very useful. So current trading conditions, I'm going to stand over here so you can really see this. So current trading conditions for hospitality at the moment. These are some of our key challenges. Now, again, these challenges will probably be across different sectors. We've got a real issue with no-shows. So what we saw during the pandemic is that customer loyalty was being really affected, and they would book 6, 7 different hospitality businesses, pubs, bars, restaurants to go to, and then not turn up. And that had a huge knock-on effect in terms of saving space for customers trying to rely on what we call walk-in trade to overcome that. So no-shows have been a real issue. It has improved a little bit, but it remains to be a challenge. Reduction in footfall. And so I had a lovely conversation with Kate, and it's really great to hear that Brixton is actually one of the highest footfall areas bounce back post-COVID, which is incredible. But generally overall, footfall has been in huge decline, and certainly it's taken a bit longer to bounce back. I think the decisions of the last 2 years, the way that the government's handled things, the way that we've opened and closed, that has had an effect on customer confidence, right? And therefore that's affected how many people are still willing to come out and feel safe. Affordability is massively important, and there's a lot of price increases happening across the board, which we'll talk about a little bit more. The working from home culture, so there's this real movement towards Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Mondays, Fridays. Some of the weekends have really dropped off a cliff. So again, you might see that in some of your businesses, you might not, but generally we do believe that that's kind of here to stay. It's become cultural, it's become part of the shift across the UK, and actually people are demanding better work conditions, and they're demanding more flexibility. And I'm probably going to use the word flexibility quite a lot, because whatever business you're in, being flexible is absolutely the key way to build resilience. And when we're seeing businesses come out of COVID and still standing and still succeeding, it's because they've managed to adapt and be flexible during that period. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. Obviously, increase of rates. Does anyone know how much cost of living's gone up by? It's really depressing, but I will share it with you. So it's forecast to go up by 5.9%. It's actually gone up by near 13. So we're essentially in a bit of a recession. So that's really tough. So that means that people just don't have the disposable income. Obviously, gas and electric bills. So I'll give you an idea. One of our clients, we work with sort of 40 different clients across the UK, but their electric bill was 250 grand a year for 6 sites. It's gone up to 1.2 million. So, you know, it's really, really tough. And obviously more so for people, actually, the consumer. It's really difficult. And of course, inflation we've talked about. There's also this huge element of hot competition. And again, for hospitality, this is rife. People are demanding more. They want better. If you think about the scenario where you go and order on Amazon, or you know, you book a flight through EasyJet, the way that you can interact with digital tech now is incredible. It's literally 24/7 and it's instant. You can get something delivered to your door within 15 minutes, 10 minutes. They demand that. No different in retail and hospitality and leisure, but yet we're not keeping up. Some venues are doing it better than others, and actually we're seeing this real movement towards independence as well, which I'm a huge fan of. I think the high streets need independence to survive, but it's just making it difficult for everybody. Everyone has to up their game. There's so much choice now that it's really becoming even more imperative how we look after our customer. That leads me nicely onto expectation and consumer behaviour. We've seen 2 years of consumer behaviour change in 6 months. It's absolutely staggering. So if your business hasn't evolved at the same rate, you're already on the back foot. And that's a really important point. And that change isn't going to retract. It's not going to go anywhere. It's only going to continue to grow and become faster and more efficient and more instant. Team retention and recruitment, I don't know what you feel like, but in hospitality, it's so tough. There's more job roles than candidates. A lot of people have lost love of our sector, my sector, because it's tough. It's really hard. You're working, we call them AF days, all day shifts. The pay's not great. You know, actually sort of something like 2/3 of parents don't want their children working in hospitality or their young adults working in hospitality. We've got a lot to do to entice people into our businesses. And the knock-on effect of that, of course, is service standards. So customers, bearing in mind what we've just learned, that their competition's rife, their expectations high, they're instantaneous, but yet we can't actually deliver the service that they expect. So everything's against us at the moment. It's really difficult. We know sustainability, it's a growing need. We need to be more sustainable, but again, it's expensive. People aren't keeping up to date with it, or they often don't even know how. Tech and digital changes we've talked about. We're on the back foot of so if you think about big retail, I've used EasyJet as a great example. You know, you book a flight, you're already being upsold something, aren't you? They're already saying, do you want to upgrade your baggage? Do you want to pick your seat? Do you want to order your bottle of champagne? You know, that's the stuff that in hospitality and leisure, we're still not quite there yet. Retail's much better. So the big online supermarkets are leading the way. They're much better. But that means it's really hard for the smaller guys, because how do you afford the same level of technology and sophistication of Tesco or Sainsbury's? I mean, it's impossible, right? Obviously, COVID-19, it's the dirty sea. I'm not going to talk about it. We all know the impact. It's ongoing. And then lastly, circle of influence. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about this. But the circle of influence is around how customers are perceiving your brand. And the negative of that is if you've got any bad online reviews or any bad experiences, that can obviously hit a far wider audience. We'll find out about that a little bit later. So I feel like I've started this off on a real negative foot, but what I'm trying to do is just explain the situation that we're in as a business, as businesses at the moment. Overall across the UK, these are some stats from a business called MPD, which is the world's largest organisation that looks across the world, in America, England, everybody, on absolute consumer analysis. So we work closely with them to get some of our sort of understanding of what's happening in the market. So generally, traffic as in footfall is down 33%. Now, I appreciate Brixton sounds like it's doing better than that, so well done. 5 million consumers across the UK are still unwilling to return and behave in the same way as before in terms of retail and leisure because they're in fear still, and we're seeing that slightly in the older generations. The frequency of visit is down by 30%. So almost 40 trips per buyer per year, they're now not visiting the same restaurant, pub, bar, hotel. And the eater check has increased by 26%. So what that's saying is they're not coming out as often, but they are spending more. So actually my example of EasyJet is a good one, because as a strategy, if you know that they're not coming out so often and you know you have to increase price, how can you get more out of them when they're there? So how do you upsell? What's that additional experience that you can offer? On-premise visits actually grew by 107% in 2021, and the delivery market, as we know, has been huge. Now, when delivery first happened and businesses were able to switch to that, online delivery, click and collect, whatever it looked like, it was really difficult for many people to facilitate. Now it's just an additional revenue stream. It's landed and it's in growth. It's slightly down on 2020-21, but it is still maintaining. So if you have a business that you can pivot, and I'm going to use that word a little bit, I know it's really overused in the last 2 years. If you have a business that can pivot and look at your online channels, it's absolutely fundamental. And it was great to hear that you did that with your business, and I'm not surprised that that's had big impact, because it's really important. And again, the businesses that we've seen that have been able to pivot are the ones that have come out of COVID in a far better position. So delivery, collection, app, all of that is on the rise. And again, what's all of that? Well, it's tech. So tech is absolutely key. The challenge we're going to have is, well, how are we going to build relationships with our customers through technology? How do you get loyalty through technology? And we're going to explore that a little bit through this presentation as well. I'll whiz through this because I'm very conscious of time, but just to give you some stats, the hospitality is having a pretty terrible time. Pubs, travel, leisure, it's all in major decline in terms of visits and revenue. We know, as I said, working from home isn't going anywhere. There's an impact on that across the board. So again, what are businesses doing, knowing that people are more at home? How does that change their behaviour? 54% of British consumers prefer restaurants that offer price promotions now, which is challenging because what are you doing in terms of price and profitability? And 40% really like loyalty programs. And we hear this word loyalty thrown around all the time. And I think, again, a lot of people just don't really know what that means. Is it do you do a stamp card like a Starbucks? Do you need an app? You know, what actually is it to drive loyalty? And my response to that is, well, it depends on your business and your customer, okay? It depends on what they want, what they need. There's different ways we can deliver that. But it is fundamental that we're looking at this idea of loyalty and loyalty programs as part of your business model moving forward. And then actually, interestingly enough, breakfast and dinner are in growth. So people are coming out because they're working from home as well. So they want to come out more for breakfast. There's a lot more breakfast meetings, breakfast out and about happening than there was before. And dinner is in growth. But lunchtime, daytime trade is taking a real hit. And again, I don't know if that's being reflected in any businesses in the room or online, but daytime is very, very challenging. So it's about how can we create routes to market and reasons to visit to counter that. Cool. Any questions on that? Good, okay, let's move on to the happier stuff, okay? So look, we know all of that, it's really tough, the market's difficult. What matters, what turns the dial? Well, absolutely, this presentation isn't actually about tech, and we do a lot of work at Bums on Seats around improving customer tech, but that's not what I'm focusing on. What I'm focusing on is engagement and rapport, and I'm going to show you a quick video. It's very old, but listen to the content.
We noticed that we could make a difference for people. Like when they come by, they leave in a better mood. And a lot of people have told us that we made their day.
Nice. A customer came up to me and said it was the best fish they'd ever had. Something happened to me and I realized I was making people happy. Give me a big hug. This gave me a plus in my life. And I love serving the people now. Seriously, sorry, thank you.
The fish philosophy is about engaging people and creating positive change in their workplaces and home lives.
Too much coffee! Too much coffee!
You know, are you being, this is a lousy stinking job, or are we being, oh, we're just selling fish, or are you being, you know, world famous? You know, you're going to do something differently when you're being world famous than you are if you're being impatient.
The fish philosophy embodies an entire way of life. It's been translated into 14 languages, and it's created positive change in thousands of small businesses, classrooms, Fortune 500 companies, and homes around the world.
You don't have to throw fish. You just have to have the energy. You have to have the commitment. You have to have fun. You have to have fun at work.
Like most people who visit the Pike Place Fish Market for the first time, I was drawn in by the excitement, the fun, the creativity, the playfulness of the fishmongers. But the longer I spent at the market, the more I saw the playfulness didn't just come from their actions, say like throwing the fish, it came from the spirit of the people working there.
Okay, so obviously exceptionally old video. I apologise that it's taking you back 20 years, but I think it's really, really apt. What did you think about that? Did you have any key takeaways from that you wanted to share? Do you relate to that in any way, that the fun factor in what you do and why it's important, how your responsibility in any sort of service role, or whether it's retail or leisure or hospitality, is obviously really to the customer, isn't it, and how you make them feel? I train a lot, and if we had longer, about energy levels and this idea that your ability to read people is really important. And actually, if someone steps into your business, and especially in hospitality or any business really, but you know, that we're making memories, we're helping them escape, or we're helping them meet friends or meet family or whatever that looks like. And why I love this is because it really takes that to the next level. So I firmly believe that you can choose your attitude and you can choose how you want to treat customers. We've all had experiences of great customer service and really bad. And you remember both. So it's really key for me that we respond to what life throws at us. We decide to make decisions on our attitude within that time, and how can we actually help our team and our customers. I think that's really apt, especially at the moment. For me, COVID has actually, there has been a positive, that I do think people are a bit more empathetic. And I think that you can engage in, you know, this idea of rapport and emotion probably a little bit easier than we could have done before. I think people have understood that we need to be around other human beings. We need to be around other people. It's absolutely pivotal. So this idea about being emotionally present, you know, we've all got 100 things going on. It's absolute rubbish that you leave your problems at the door. You can't do that. We shouldn't do that. We're human beings. We're emotional. But actually, how do we be emotionally present in that moment? You know, know, whether you call that mindfulness or whatever, your responsibility at that time is with that guest, with that customer. And by doing that, they feel something, you know, they trust you, and that's absolutely key. And I love this idea of play. You know, I say it to across the board in hospitality a lot, and I go, God, you know, it's not brain surgery. We're not curing cancer. Like, you know, we talk so much about bottom line and profit, but actually what we're doing is we're responsible for people and feelings and emotions, and that's an amazing job. You know, that's an incredible thing that we do. So we should absolutely have fun and be enthusiastic, because people feed off that. And even if somebody comes into your orbit and they're not that way, you can bring them up. You know, you can isolate them if you're too much. And there's some people that would have walked into that environment and gone, oh, this is not for me. And that's also okay, because we're all different, whether you're introvert or extrovert. But actually this idea of having fun and being enthusiastic, people feed off that. And it's the best way to build engagement and rapport. And ultimately, I love this idea of making their day. So, you know, what are the simple things you can do? Beautiful things like, you know, just writing, you know, have a good day on the coffee cup, or, you know, just something really simple. It doesn't have to be monetary value. People don't actually value finances as much as they used to. That's not the point. What we value is true connections and this idea of memories and thoughts, and that's absolutely key. So some really simple things in your own businesses you can do is just go back and really ask yourself honestly, am I doing these things? How can I bring more emotion, more play, more little touches into my business? Because that is actually what people remember. The other bit that we look at, and this is I sort of created this, it's called CRT, customer response time. Now, how I relate this is, obviously in hospitality, this could be how quickly do you respond to a customer in terms of answering the phone, they've sent an inquiry about a birthday party. But for walk-in businesses, that initial greeting and that response as someone steps into your business, which goes back to everything we just spoke about, is absolutely fundamental. So that great first impression is all about the speed of how you greet them. Again, for me, I walk into a business, whatever it is, and if no one talks to me or looks at me or makes eye contact for the first few minutes, I'm a bit like, you know, am I here? Can you see me? Am I visible? And that is really, really important, because immediately that first impression is negative on you and the business. It's reflective, right? So for me, this is absolutely key. CRT, customer response time, whether it's in person and it's eye contact and I'll be with you in a minute, or whether it's an inquiry or a phone call, whatever it is, you've got to be quick because it makes them feel valued. It's almost like I wrote this. It also makes you know that the business is appreciated, which is key. And if what they will do, and this is very hospitality driven, but customers will not just think about one option, one choice. So whether it's a florist, okay, so they might come to you one week and then they might want to go and try somewhere else. How do you keep them? Well, that first impression is absolutely critical to that, and whatever business you work through. And again, this idea of 24/7, which is a pro and a negative, it depends where you sit on the spectrum of tech, but it's just a fundamental fact, right? People are used to instant. So we have to try and do things that as much as we can to really keep up with that, because we're not going to change how they feel. Cool, so the next bit is I've created this formula. This is something that I absolutely believe in terms of this idea of the perfect sales process. For me, 70% of everything we do in terms of that sale, that achieving that sale, is down to your relationship. It's down to rapport and trust. It's understanding your customer and your customer needs, and it's delivering that. And it's following that fish philosophy and that great first impression to start building that relationship. Absolutely everything. If you do nothing but that, you're already better than the average. We focus too much on this idea of sort of knowledge and closing the sale. Now, these things are just obvious. You know, you need to know your product or your service or what you're selling, but of course you do. You should know everything about it. That's just a given. That's training. You need to involve yourself in that. But that isn't the point. The point is, do I trust you? Are you going to give me what I want? Do I look at you, am I in your orbit and I feel something and I want to come back and you make me feel that way? And then actually the last thing we would look at is closing the sale, gaining commitment. Because if you do this is all just, it happens, it's fundamental. So a lot of what we focus on is this idea of needs, wants and emotion. The guest experience piece is also really important, because I say to people, what is guest experience? And they go, well, it's, you know, it's like the experience the guest has. And I'm like, well, yeah, but actually, obviously, what guest experience is it's their perception of you. Okay, so they're judging you, they're thinking about you within a tenth of a second is how long it takes to make up your mind. When you walked in today, you'd already made up your mind about me. It's just what we do. I'm not being offensive, but there's an element of, in your mind, you go, how are they look? It's just what we do. But the key thing we ask is, do I trust them? That's the key thing we ask. So the guest experience is going, do I trust them? What am I thinking of the brand, the venue, the product, the culture, the greeting? They're doing all of these things. Our brains are incredible, right? And of course, some of us do this less than others. I'm sure lovely people really try not to be judgmental. We don't want to be judgmental, but it's a fact of human nature that there's an element of the guest judging you or judging your product or your business or you. And that's really, really pivotal. So they do not base their loyalty on price or product. And where we've seen a really big shift, which is a good thing, is this idea of moving away from discounts. So I don't know if you all remember Pizza Express, but Pizza Express had this huge discount culture where you wouldn't go unless you had a voucher. And it ultimately almost destroyed their business. But what it did is the more people that jump on this bandwagon of going, come on this day, you get 20% off, 50% off, it creates this environment and culture that everyone has to follow suit. So the big companies do it. The smaller independents have got no bloody chance. They have to do it. It's terrible. Thankfully, we're seeing a move away from that because we know all of these things to be true. How do we know them? Because we understand customers better, because we're looking at other sectors where this is absolutely key. Now, obviously, you can use discounts at certain times if you need to, off-peak for specific reasons. But generally, as a rule of thumb, focus on the relationship and the product. Don't worry about the price. Focus on you and how you're perceiving that business for your customer. It's all about the experience. And I think the businesses that are doing really well at the moment offer a different experience. And that's, again, a lot of competition that we're up against. So when you go in, I don't just want to sit down and have my food and leave. I want to sit down, have my food, be greeted. I've got an amazing waiter who's in a fantastic uniform. I've got a chill out zone over there. I can go and play ping pong. It's all going on. And that's a sensory experience that customers want more and more of. So how can you continue to create that? Because this is part of this guest experience. So we know that rapport builds relationships and trust. It's all about being in sync, and it's all about emotions. Do you know what percentage of a decision you make based on your emotions? Have you got any idea? No, higher. 86%. So 86% of the decision you make is based on an emotion. And what's an emotion? It's a feeling, okay? And then we look at the difference between this idea of needs and wants. Well, what's your need? So your need is food, water, shelter. But what do you want? Your wants are aspirational. Your wants are far bigger. So understanding the customer wants is actually tapping into the emotion, because the needs, you just have to deliver them. So I need to open my shop at this time or my restaurant at this time. I need to serve a food and drink. I need to cater for this many people. That's all great, but that doesn't drive any sort of feeling from your customer. And again, this is all going back to this idea of engagement and rapport. So guest experience, rapport, trust, it's all about emotion. And that is absolutely fundamental. So when you go back and review your businesses, are you delivering that? And it might sound a bit fluffy, but it's really, really important. So I'm going to play you a little video, which I love, and I just want to see what you think of this.
Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. Oh, shall I
get extra.
Cute. Isn't it cute? So there's an obvious emotion that film's about. What is it? Love. What's the other one? Chewing gum. It's not an emotion. I've had some terrible chewing gum. But what's the other one? Do you know what the biggest understanding is a good one? Do you know what the biggest human emotion actually is? The most driving force that we have as human beings. Do you know what it is? It's actually fear. So majority of our decision making often is based on fear, even if you recognise it or not. And the second is love. But love we actually know very little about. Now what they've done really smartly here, good old Wrigley's, is they've sold you gum, but they've sold you gum based on the fear and the love, the fear of them losing each other, the love of their relationship. So when you watch that, most people feel something. You know, there's a feeling, you can relate to it in some way. Why is that relevant when we're talking about rapport? Am I just going off on a weird tangent, or is there, what am I mean, I do that. But, you know, why is that relevant, do you think? Yeah.
Is it that you're just kind of like connecting with your customer, like it's an emotion that we've all felt, so you're getting them to like associate that feeling with your brand?
Absolutely right. It's all about the connection and being on the same wavelength. So they're using this to connect and to get them on the same wavelength as where they want them to be. So they've got a relationship naturally between Wrigley's and these really strong, powerful emotions. So when we talk about sales, and we talk about sales being the relationship, the first start of that is that emotional connection with your customer. And actually you can do that through lots of different forums. So you can absolutely reflect that on your website, your Instagram account, your photography, the way you talk in your emails, the way you pick up the phone, the way you greet them, the way you say goodbye. For independent businesses in particular, how your brand is and how you reflect your brand and across those different levels of emotion is really, really important. So it's not just one forum, but I just think that's a really good example. So as we mentioned, 86% of decision making is based on the emotional level. So if you're not connecting emotionally with your customer, that's 86% of the reason you might not get a sale on whatever level you look at. So if you're just focusing on the fundamentals of your business, you're missing out on a whole potential market. And guess what? That's the best way to get customer loyalty as well. My caveat with hospitality when the no-show thing happened, and I was asked to give some webinars around how to avoid no-shows, and I was pretty blunt, and I said, well, I wouldn't dream of not turning up to my hairdresser without telling them I wasn't turning up. So if your customer has no emotional connection to your business, why would they turn up? So as much as you can make it easy to cancel, and we must make it easy to cancel, that's just a bit of process, that's a tick box. Actually, there's an element of going, well, you know, am I not connecting? Because you wouldn't dream of letting someone down if you had a connection to them. You'd only do that if you didn't give a toss. So again, that just proves this theory. So as we talked about, these are the needs, they're the very basic things. Now, what I will say about the needs, if you can't meet a basic customer need, doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to get the sale. So if someone comes into your business and they want chocolate and you're a florist, well, you know, you're not, that's tough, right? So there's some really obvious things. Yeah, please, there we go. You have chocolate too. So I feel like I keep clicking on floristry for some reason. But you know, and in hospitality, if they want to book a table for a set day and they won't flex on that day, it doesn't matter how amazing you are, you won't bring the business. There's some really fundamental stuff. But the more important bit is this idea of wants and delving deeper. And we always talk about, you know, how you ask the right questions and open questions and engage to understand the needs and wants. People generally like talking about themselves. I mean, look, I've been up here for half an hour and I love it. But, you know, they do. And so your job is to listen and to create that environment that they feel that they trust you enough to tell you their wants. And therefore, you can deliver that memorable guest experience. If you haven't recently gone and asked your customers, what is it they want? How do they feel? What is what's the feeling that when they walk into your establishment? Do it. It's really important. You might even only need to ask a handful of people that you trust, but just ask those questions because that information will really help guide you on where you can improve. Cool, okay, so that is rapport relationships. So obviously to summarise, it's all about the emotional connection, understanding that important greeting, the guest experience, and really ensuring that you are adapting to deliver that as much as possible and not focusing on these sort of sterile fundamentals, but really looking at how to connect with the guest. Loyalty and retention. So we have 4 pillars here that I have written for resilience that we work with businesses on. So these pillars are, as always, with everything we do in hospitality, leisure, or retail is becoming customer centric. So what does that mean? What's customer centric? Well, it's obvious. Am I delivering what my customers want? The next bit, of course, is innovation. And I don't think that's ever going to change at the moment because of the way that the world is adapting so quickly and our consumers are. You're going to need to innovate all the time. And there's lots of ways that we do that. I think surrounding yourself with other great people is a really important one. And certainly being a solo business owner, what's got me motivated and out of bed and dealing with challenges is this idea of having a forum of people that I can sit around the room or a pub or wherever or a yoga studio, wherever you feel most comfortable and actually get innovative with. So innovate with your business all the time. Look at other businesses and what they're doing as well. Obviously, you've got to be really agile. Agility is key. And again, that is something that's fundamental. So look further down the line. Something that we do too often, which I understand, especially at the moment, is we focus on like the now, and what we should be looking at is what about tomorrow, what about next month, what about 3 months? So really being agile of the future is key. And then if you see problems on the horizon, don't wait, deal with it there and then. And then obviously adaptive is absolutely imperative because you'll lose customers if you don't adapt, because the next place down the road could open tomorrow and they all want to go and see the new place. They all want to go and check out the new place, but you need them to do that and then come back. But you need to know, how you can adapt to achieve that. So these are the 4 things that when you look at your businesses, are you achieving? Are you putting your customers first? Are you being innovative all the time? Are you being agile to the market and consumer behaviour? And are you adapting any problems, concerns, etc. as they arise? This is a really interesting fact, but I use it a lot. It takes 6 to 7 times more cost to attract a new customer than retain a new one. So a lot of time people always talk about, you just need new business, and depending on your business, you absolutely do. Otherwise, you won't grow. But actually, to be sustainable, and when we talk about resilience, keeping your current customers is as important. So really, really remember that. And what really drives loyalty and repeat visits? So again, I mentioned it earlier, it takes 1/10 of a second for someone to start working out if they trust you and if they think you're capable. So that idea of resilience starts at that very, very first point. Again, a reminder that the great greet, the positive body language, no distractions, be present, this open, honest and friendly approach is really important, and show you believe in it and you care. And actually that is the best way for a customer to want to come back. Feedback is really important as well. So did you deliver what you promised? What are the learnings? Okay. Do you often look at your own businesses and look inward and actually analyse your own businesses? And that's really, really key. We do this a lot for companies. We look at stop, start, continue. So what should we stop doing because it's not working? What should we start doing because it's our innovation? And what's business resilient that we should continue? So these are just some little things that you should go away and have a little think about. And look at your online buzz and presence as well. So what people are saying about you online is really, really important. A lot of consumers now, they will literally just glance at your Instagram and decide if they want to visit you or not. It's really, really fickle. So understanding this element is absolutely key. Digital pictures. So with big businesses now, and I'm going to sit down for a minute, with big businesses now, what they look at is something called data profiling and data segmentation. And it's kind of what you're up against as independents, right? So they take all of their database, whatever industry it is, and they go, right, so who are my customers? What age are they? What are they looking at on Facebook? How do they behave? What's their favourite drink, food? When did they last visit my store or their shop? And then they start to talk to them in a different way. So they've got big marketing teams that can send out 15 different emails a month based on the customer base. And that's really tough. How the hell do you do that as a small business? So just to start it really off really simple for you, absolutely go and review your customer journey, which is absolutely key. And any data that you have, start looking at where that's coming from. Think about what sort of customers are currently visiting you, who loves you, who's an ambassador, who visits you more than once or twice a week or a month, depending on your style of business. That's absolutely important, because if you know how they behave, you'll be able to replicate that when you think about new businesses as well. Use your customer journey touch points to identify your segments for customer profiling. So confirm your customer's commitment in their booking. All of those things are great. Who is your customer? How are you delivering a memorable experience? And what sort of simple tech can you get on your websites and your online presence to help do that? It's not about replacing human engagement, but it's about that online journey journey, that smooth transition? Can they find your contact details simply, for example? You know, if it is somewhere that you need to take bookings or appointments, is that easy to do? What's the photography? Is it updated? Are you committing to that online presence? Because all of that is what customers are currently looking at, and that isn't going to change. So it's something that, again, I would really take away and think about. And then depending on how you store your data, there's some really easy, free, or very, very cost-effective CRM systems, so customer relationship management systems, where you can put the data in and it will tell you some of these answers. So if you are a business where you need to continually talk to your customer, and I'd always advise that you do, again, going back to this idea of there's different channels, so you can talk to them online, through email, face-to-face, over the phone, you know, all of those channels. Think about the way that you're doing that differently depending on who your customer is. And I'm going to show you some examples of generations in a sec. So here are the 4 generations. Does anyone know anything about these at the moment? So baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. So this is how we categorize in marketing and psychology how different customers behave. So baby boomers is the oldest generation, followed by Gen X, then millennials, and then Gen Z. So Gen Z is the newest generation. It's everyone who is are under 24. Okay, so anyone here got a business that has a lot of people under 24 at the moment, or is it mainly older?
As in customers? Or
Yeah,
employees?
customers.
I would say mine is like a mix of millennials and Gen Z.
Great.
But almost all my employees are
Gen Z.
And that's been really useful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really that's challenging in itself, because Gen Z have such a short attention span. So when you're talking about retaining staff, but also retaining Gen Z customers, they are by far the most challenging generation. So just to give you a summary, so if you're someone that has a slightly older generation, now these are the guys that out of that 5 million I said at the beginning who are still quite nervous to come back out and within hospitality and leisure, these are the guys that fall into that category. They're a little bit older. We call them baby boomers. They're obviously retired or approaching retirement. They're probably your parents or your grandparents, and they really love planning in advance. So things like eating out, they do in advance. They're creatures of habit. They don't tend to be fussed by what's new, what's hot. So this is a really good generation if you've got it, because they probably are very loyal, and actually they've got really good disposable income. So if you do have baby boomers in your business, they're someone that they're all about loyalty. You really want to retain these customers. And actually at the moment, they're our biggest generation. So we've got the most baby boomers in the UK than we've ever had. A few years ago, well, not even that, before COVID, we would disregard this generation a lot in hospitality. We don't want baby boomers, but now everybody's thinking about ways of how we can approach and get these guys into the businesses, because they spend more, they're loyal. So it's a really important point to think about that generation and how do you get more of them and how do you retain them. Gen X is the next one. So this is they were born between 1964 and 1980. These guys have got childcare ownership. They own their own homes. They're pretty set up career-wise. They probably only go out for specific occasions in terms of hospitality visits, because they have quite a high drink spend. So it's that kind of once a month go out with the girls. It's very planned in advance. They often have a bit more money to spend, but obviously there's always the concern around kids. So there's half-term, things like that. You're going to get a lot of this generation in as well. So if you're family-orientated, you want to attract this generation. That's really key. They're definitely going to be key decision makers, and generally they know what they want. So, if something goes wrong as well, you will know about it. They don't accept average, because, their money's important. They've worked hard for it. They're at that stage in their lives. But they're actually the smallest generation. So these are, out of all the generations, these guys, we have the least Gen X's across the UK. And then millennials. So I'm a millennial, and I apologise. They are absolutely the most widely talked about. They have been really instrumental in this movement towards tech and digital in that era and how we behave. They are fickle, not as fickle as Gen X, but they are a little bit fickle. But they are the generation that cares about the experience. So these are the guys that really have been driving that. How do I feel? What's my feeling? What's the experience? What do you look like online? What are you telling me? That's all about millennials. they're actually a very difficult generation to market to. They're the most difficult because they're the most varied. So if you look at the ages that they were born, so much happened in the 80s and the 90s, and you know, we've got one millennial that could be really entrepreneurial and another one that's just like, yeah, really fickle. So it's a massive generation. It's very hard to market to. What we normally advise with this generation, if you have got millennials, is it's trial and error. So it's definitely not one thing will work for everybody. You might be prepared that there might be 2 or 3 different things that you need to try in terms of loyalty or guest experience, but ultimately they're very influenced by their peers. So if they see someone going there or experiencing it, or you know, the circle of influence, they'll be there in a shot. And then the last one, then we'll have a quick break because I know you've been sat in this room for a long time, is Gen Z. So these guys are our youngest generation, born before 95. We're still learning about Gen Z, obviously, because they are the newest generation. They are absolutely 24/7. You know, they want everything instant online. They really will gleam all of your social media and your tech. They're all about, I mean, TikTok generation, yeah. So I still, you know, I have to understand it for my job, but it's even beyond me. So it's crazy, but they really care about social issues, sustainability. They're driving this idea of low and no. I mean, most of them don't drink. It was absolutely alien to me when I was their age, but it's really, really interesting. So if you do have Gen Z, you have to work a hell of a lot harder to get their loyalty, because they will absolutely just want to keep going to the next big place, the next big thing. But it's important, talking about profiling and what you can do with small businesses, is to understand, just have a vague understanding of these 4, and what do you currently have in your business and what do you want, and therefore structure slightly differently how you speak to people online or through email. And it's not difficult to do. You're never going to be able to do what the big retailers are doing, but you can do it a little bit and it will make a big difference. Challenges, how to overcome them through relationships and rapport. We've then talked about the importance of guest experience, this idea of 24/7 instant gratification, how can we adhere to that? And now we're going to talk about lasting impressions. So as important as the greeting is obviously the feeling that the customer is left with at the end. And again, this isn't just about face-to-face. This could be when they leave your Instagram account or your website, or they finish reading your email, whatever that looks like, but lasting impressions. So, another little video.
Jamie and Jenny have had an amazing meal at Casitas. The food was great, the service was good, and they've had a brilliant evening. Jamie posted pictures on Instagram, and his friends and followers saw how amazing the food and cocktails looked online. So they then went to Casitas and told their friends how great it was. Jenny has told her best friend, who told her work friend, who told their colleagues, who told their friends. Now everyone in their circle of friends and contacts has heard how great Casitas is, and those people have told everyone in their circle how great it is too. The circle of influence keeps turning.
So obviously very cheesy, but that is the circle of influence, right? We know that. So talking about growing sales, recommendations, reviews, personal, case studies, things like that is for small businesses, I think, is probably the most fundamental tool that you've got. So everything we've already spoken about this evening leads us up to this idea of you want them to leave with a positive, lasting impression that's good enough that they can tell people about it. We're really good at telling people when things aren't very good as human beings. So it's really easy to go on TripAdvisor or leave a review or wax thing on Instagram and put something negative. But what you want to do is flip the switch on that and talk about the positive, lasting impression. So is there any ways that you think you can do that more effectively? You've got any ideas? What do you think people think about when they want a good lasting impression? What are some of the things you can do?
I think, I don't know, like little touches.
Yeah.
Your own special, personal touch.
Yeah. So again, it's this idea of personalisation. So if you understand the needs and the wants, how you would then end that sale or that conversation or whatever that looks like is unique to that person, so they feel valued and appreciated. And again, that guest experience just carries on going all the way through. it's not always, again, about just handing them something saying, come back and get 50% off. I mean, that's fine, but everybody does that. You know, you've got to think bigger, delve deeper than that. What does that individual customer want? So how a baby boomer, their lasting impression versus someone who's Gen Z could actually be completely different. So it's just understanding. The more you understand about your customer, the easier this becomes. 86% of consumers will read online reviews for local businesses. I mean, that is huge. 95% of them are actually the younger generation. So they will literally go and make a decision in a second about whether they want to come to you or not based on either a quick review or a photo. A consumer will read an average of 10 online reviews before trusting a local business. So if they decide they want a tradesman or a florist, they might look at 10 different places and go, okay, who's got the best reviews? I'll go there. That can be how fickle it is, without knowing anything, without you even having a chance to engage in a relationship with them. 94% of consumers said a negative review has convinced them to avoid visiting a business. So one negative review can actually mean that that customer just won't come at all. It's a real challenge. And 64% of people will choose where to go based on word of mouth. So this idea of word of mouth is actually a really powerful tool. If you do all the hard work and the lasting impression because maybe you're busy and the phone's ringing and you kind of forget to engage with the body language and the eye contact and all the things that are really important, how they feel when they leave, that will determine what happens to their experience after that and what they tell people. So again, this is really good for if you do have teams of staff, however many teams of staff you have. Don't just focus on the start of the journey. Remember that the lasting impression is as important, and giving them some of those stats is really important. You will get these slides, some of these slides, by the way. So what's the desired outcome? So these are some of the things. So they become a repeat loyal customer. Do you know how many times a customer needs to visit you before they become loyal? Would you have a guess? So it used to be 3, it's now 5. So you have to work really hard. In hospitality, years and years ago, there was a really famous restaurant in London that used to use different colour napkins before we had technology, to determine if that customer is a first-time visitor, second time, third time. So the first time a customer came in, if they've not visited before, they place a red napkin on the table, and that would tell all the waiters that that person hasn't been before. So they come over and go, oh, thank you so much, welcome, I know you haven't been before, and give them the great first impression of a new customer. When they would leave, they would then give them something, which, oh God, I'm jealous now. Is that for me? Oh, wow, this is amazing. When they would leave, they would then say, right, so we know this is your first visit. If you want to come back a second time, here's my card, here's my name. I'll give you a glass of Prosecco. So next time they'd come up, they'd ring, they'd have the name. It would all be very personal. They'd come in, they'd go, oh, great. So that was a blue napkin. The team would come over, they'd give them a glass of Prosecco, and so on and so forth. And they take them through this journey. We don't need to use coloured napkins anymore because, again, if you have a really good CRM system or a basic one, you can understand how many times people have visited. And if you're a small business, you'll do it from facial recognition. But remembering people and then taking them through that journey, because it's 6-7 times more expensive to get a new customer than a loyal customer, actually giving them a free glass of Prosecco for the first visit, or a flower or a handwritten note to say thank you so much. It doesn't cost anything, and if you do that when they leave, not when they when they arrive, that's their lasting impression. So again, get sort of innovative on some ways and things that you could do that. Obviously, you want them to recommend you to others, and that's really important. And even very simply, if everyone that visited you, you did get their details and you sent them a follow-up to say, how was your experience? If you only ask them one question, would you recommend us to others? It's an absolutely powerful question that you can ask anybody. So if you only do that one thing, do it. Would you recommend us? Yes, I would. Great. Because you're actually also inadvertently putting it in their mind that you're enticing them to do that. And if they say no, then you can say, okay, why? What can we do better and differently? So that's a really important question. Think about how you can start to weave that into your process. Obviously, you want them to get in touch with you directly. So sales, as I mentioned earlier, people buy from people. They want to come in and go, Sandra looks after me. I know Sandra, don't want to speak to anyone else, just want to speak to Sandra, because Sandra knows what I order, where I sit, what I like to eat, so on and so forth. You want that personalisation. It's all very well, these big companies that can afford tech personalisation, great, but you want it on a personal level. That's still not going anywhere. Yeah, people still need that connection. Obviously then we've got leave a good online review, they thank you personally on the way out, they thank the host and they seem to enjoy themselves. But these are the top, these top 3 are the 3 that I would focus on. Repeat loyal customers, giving them something for their first visit because that entices them back, recommending them to others and asking them if they would do that, and then entice them to get in touch with you directly on a personal level. There's some of my kind of key tips. Any questions on that? All good, cool. And then again, just a reminder, the fish philosophy. So how to get the best lasting impression, choose your attitude, be there emotionally present, play, make their day. It links back into everything that we talk about and everything that we do. So if you only do those 4 things, you will absolutely get repeat business. And also it's a hell of a lot easier to then talk and go and get new customers, because the more business you get, the more business you entice, because again, word of mouth, circle of influence. So all of these things interlink, and that's why in sales we love circles, because it's all about doing the same thing over and over and over again. And as part of your culture within your companies, regardless of what size you are, repeating the same thing over and over again that's positive is how you create a culture and an ethos that just becomes second nature. But you have to start somewhere with what that looks like and what's right for you and your business. And then I'm just going to finish on some top tips. I'm actually going to have a slug of this. Anyone mind? I know I'm on camera. Cheers, guys. So top tips. Very thirsty work. That's delicious, thank you. Okay, so again, this is obviously slightly geared towards hospitality, but I will adapt it for any business. So local community sales. Community, community, community. I cannot say it enough. Independent businesses have the best shot of being a real part of their community, I believe. I think bigger groups, and they always struggle with it. A, you have more loyal staff that probably understand the community, live in the community. B, you have that ability to actually be more adaptive. So within your community, we talk about a 15, 20-minute radius, no more than that, depending on where you are. So Brixton, probably 15 minutes is enough. So within your 15-minute radius, the old school way I used to do it is get like Google Maps, put you on the map, draw a circle around where you actually are. And within all those streets, do you know every business? Do you know where the offices are? Do you know where the concierge are and the hotels? Do you know where the Airbnbs are, which are actually great business for you to advertise in? So within your sort of 10, 15-minute radius, all those streets, you can systematically just walk up, and it's really like, you don't need anything fancy. Walk up and down the streets and understand what's in that market. Who in there is right for you, and therefore what do they want? If it's a B2B, if it's an office focus, what is the relationship that offices want with you, different to, say, a consumer relationship or a leisure business? So, you know, things like linking with cinemas, gyms, all of that is brilliant, because they will tell people about you. Remembering what we're trying to do is this positive circle of influence and this word of mouth. Also looking at off-peak drivers. So, you know, what's the times, your trading times, where you know that you're not going to be as busy? How do you promote that to your immediate circle, your immediate radius? And if you are a tourist destination or a local or destination market, if you do have tourists, how does that differ? So you're not going to focus on loyalty. Tourist is about what? It's about the experience. It's about your online presence often. So how do they know about you? The concierges, the leisure, the parts, you know, the cinemas, the theatres. So again, remember what your customers want and who they are. We talk a lot about local and destination. For you guys in this room, I think it's all about local community. And I think that's really key. And going above and beyond, you know, how can you put on different events? So if you have spaces that are underutilized on the Monday, can you host like a community yoga class? Can you have poetry in there and talks? There's so many ways you can get creative and create that experience, and then you promote it to your local community. Understanding different local Facebook groups, Instagram groups, using those hashtags, all of that stuff is key. You want people to feel that they're part of something when they come into your business, and that they are part of that community. Because for me, I think that is the best way that you can flourish. So that would be my advice on there. But if you want any more on community sales, because I know this is very vague, I have got more stuff to send you. So if there's things that you want additional to this, I can help you with that. Because where I take this further is, who do you talk to in these types of businesses? So if you're going into an office, who do you talk to? Well, you want to talk to what? The PA or the HR director, because you want them to tell all the employees about you. If you're going into a hotel, it's the concierge. And then how do they differ? So a concierge, they care about the reputation of their hotel and recommending the best for their customers and their clients. Whereas if it's an office, they might, if it's full of Gen Z people, so younger generation, they just want to go somewhere where they know that they can get looked after and have a great time. So like, understanding that and the type of businesses, sometimes less is more. You're better off going, I've got 10, 15, 20 companies that love what we do than trying to get around everything. But to do that bit, you have to put the grunt work in to understand who the businesses are. And there is not a cheat to that. It's just good old-fashioned sales. Cool, so this is all about booking system and checklists for hospitality. I'll run through this for people on video because it's important for anyone who has leisure businesses. So we look at 3 key things when we talk about booking systems and bookable space for hospitality and leisure. We talk about capacity and optimization. So because majority of customers now just want to go online, put a date, put a time, number of people, can I make a reservation? Yes. We've seen the increase in reservations go tenfold in the last 2 years because of COVID. Most people generally book. Yes, there are still walk-in businesses, but if it's anything that's special or occasional, they want their set table, booking is key. So we want to make sure that all your bookable space is available. There's some great, really cost-effective booking systems that if anybody watches this and wants more information, ask us. Not going to charge anyone for it. We can send out a list of some options because the system will do so much of the work for you. Things like table turning times is really important. And again, looking at this idea of off-peak and peak. We also talk a lot about dynamic pricing. So, you know, should you charge the same on a Monday to a Friday? There's lots of stuff like that we can talk about. But ultimately, the booking system is always the first place that you start if you want to look at more sales for a hospitality business, because so often it's not good enough and you're losing customers at that initial point. Reducing no-shows, if this is an issue for anyone, my response goes back to the very beginning, which is build a better relationship with your customer so that you have loyalty and they won't just not turn up. So that's the first thing I will say. And once you've done that, and if you're still getting no-shows, which I would be surprised that I would see that minimize if you treat your customers in a slightly more effective way, things like SMS text messaging, and actually for any business, small businesses now, SMS became really untrendy for a few years. People were like, oh, I don't want to use it. It's come back massively. So it's not massively expensive either, and it's a really good tool, remembering what I said about loyal customers versus new customers and the cost. So if you have got a business that would benefit from an SMS message, whether it's a reminder about a booking or you need to just drive some footfall with an offer, whatever it is, it's a really good option. And absolutely, don't be scared now to ask for card authentication and to ask for any sort of payment or authentication up front for your busy and peak days, because customers are used to doing it. So they're used to putting down card details. It just eliminates that no-show. It checks their commitment. So don't shy away from that, especially sort of if your key trade is, say, Thursday, Friday nights, it's okay. So there's just some top tips there. And then absolutely, I spoke about this at the very beginning, layer, experience, packages, upsells. You know, the more you can do of that, the better. Be more of a one-stop shop, be more diverse, be more creative with what you can offer. Think about my EasyJet example, love or hate them, in terms of that process. And just go back and go, what luxury extras can I sell? Because if you can increase your spend per head by even 50p or £1 across the year, that's substantial. And again, it also just really helps you keep the business within your business and your family. And if you can afford it and you do have it, tech is a really good way of doing it, where it doesn't put any more time on you, because the key word for us all this year is efficiency, because we can't afford, you know, lots of different job roles and people doing lots of different things. So how do you be more efficient? And lastly, if it's a very sort of a walk-in business, so if you're not a business that relies on any form of pre-booking or pre-commitment, for us, this is really about offering an experience, and we call it RTV, reasons to visit, and how you communicate that message in the right way to the right customer. So customer profile, who visits you now, what are their needs and wants, go back and look at that. Who is your target customer? go back and look at that. What are the trends that you're seeing? So great conversation, Mother's Day, Valentine's, great. Obviously that's really important. You wouldn't discount on those days. You'd absolutely put prices up. You'd think about upsells. You'd want bookings really in advance, but there's lots more there. So the breakfast occasion, you know, people want fresh flowers for breakfast, lots more. So think about that. Vegan is not a trend. It's an absolute fundamental diet. It's normal, right? So what? We're vegan. We've got over this silly thing about it being a trend. So make sure that you're also ethical as well. And we talk about that a lot, and sustainable. And that all goes back to this idea of community and local. And think, plan ahead. So I said it when I looked at the circle of resilience, think further ahead. Silly things like the World Cup is exactly the same time as Christmas. So like now we should be thinking for hospitality, well, how are we going to juggle people wanting to come and watch football matches and then also wanting a Christmas party? Because it's going to be really challenging. And that's all stuff that we should be thinking about now. It'll probably make you cringe, but before COVID, I would launch Christmas for businesses in January for that year. You know, we'd already sorted it by the end of December for the following year. But consumers are going to start coming back to this idea of planning further ahead. I love this. Like the movement towards like micro weddings and occasions and celebrations is massive. So milestone birthdays, people want that treat. They want that experience. Whatever you sell and you offer, package doesn't have to be lots of different options, but repackage it so consumers can see this is a birthday. This is what I can do for birthdays. This is an anniversary. This is what I can do for anniversaries. This is just a 18th birthday. You know, just think about it, because your search engine optimization on your website, which is how people find you on Google, it'll be a lot easier when you're putting in these keywords. So really think about not creating loads of different products, but just repackaging it and selling it and making it obvious. And when do you send that out and how do you communicate that? Again, also your generation. So an 18th birthday party shouldn't be talked about in the same way as a 50th. Yeah, so on and so forth. And then obviously the last thing for me is all about the team. And I think hopefully some of this stuff here, whether you've got one person working for you or 5 or 10, whatever number, this is empowering stuff that you could say, right, based on this, this is our standard. So get them on board, talk to them, train them, create a positive customer experience, love a bit of role play, and check up on them, speak to your customers, really, really key. And absolutely, it's all social. Do not shy away from social media. Facebook, although it's an older generational thing now, it's still the biggest social media platform. It's TikTok and Instagram still don't touch it. So those 3 are absolutely critical. If it's business to business that you want, get on LinkedIn, because it's a really good way of finding businesses. But social is absolutely, well, it's just critical and it isn't going anywhere. So yeah, okay, there you go.